Welcome to today's webinar, where we're going to cover preparing a T5013 for partnerships, slips, and returns. My name is Sarka Hojda. I'm a CPA, CGA, and a tax analyst with TaxCycle. Today, we are going to cover T5013, the key options that you're going to need to set up. We're going to talk about creating a new T5013 file. We're going to add partners. We'll show you how the GIFI import works in T5013. We're going to prepare a basic T5013 return with slips. I'm going to show you how to allocate partner income. Here's some of the options for doing that. We're going to talk about reviewing the file, invoicing, which is now available in T5013, printing, tracking workflow, T1135, and new this year, T1134 filing options in T5013. And then we'll circle back to amending a return. So we will hop into TaxCycle now. And to create a basic return, we're going to start from new. If you've been using TaxCycle for a while, you probably are already familiar with the carry forward options. If we're creating a new return, we're going to come here in our main screen. We're going to come down to new 5013 return. If we click on that, it's going to ask us for the fiscal year start and fiscal year end. If you've been using T2, it's very similar to how T2 works for this. So if I put in a starting date, it will automatically calculate an end date for me, and we just click Create Return. And here we're starting with a brand new blank T5013 return. First thing we wanted to cover were your primary options that you need. So I've added a little options wrench at the top. You can also get there from the main screen. If you want to add it at the top like I have it, if you click on this little down arrow at the top, you can go ahead and find it here in your items that you can add to your quick options at the top, and just go ahead and add it there so you always have it available for you. So if we pop into options, key things that you need to file T5013s are down here. If you go to transmission, slips accounts, so you're going to want to make sure that you have a WAC entered in here, because this is how you file and transmit information for T5013s and slips. And if you're filing in Quebec, you're going to need to have a relevé transmitter number and also a slip sequence number down here in the RL15 section. If I collapse this, and then we could just go down to the 5013 options. Under General, something you might want to look at is whether or not you want to automatically lock files when they're completed. So on final transmission, this will auto lock your file so you don't have to do that manually. You might want to look at your new file settings, so you can set your defaults for how you want to work in your T5013 module. Price, if you're going to use invoicing outside of T5013, if you're going to use invoicing in T5013, you want to come in here and set up your pricing for how you are going to invoice the work that you're doing. You want to come in and set up your print sets as well for T5013 if you want to do something other than what we have for you by default out of the box. And those are the basic ones that you probably will want to look at before you start doing any new returns here. So I'm going to go ahead and hop out of here. And the next thing we want to do, we've got our options set up, is we'll want to take a look at the info worksheet. This is where all of the key information you need to drive things within the module get entered. So this is where we're going to set up the partnership. And I have a cheat sheet, so I'm just going to go ahead and enter a business number. We already have our fiscal period. I'm going to put in the name of the partnership. And if they have a trade name, you'll enter that. If we're filing in Quebec, we want to make sure that this TP600 required is set to yes. And that will trigger all of the relevant Quebec-related forms that you're going to need. This option here will copy your T5013 ACB amounts for the RL15 slips. And then we have a QCID number as well. These guys. There we go. And then we are going to define the type of partnership that we're working on here. So you've got the options for non-tax shelter partnerships in this field. In this case, I'm going to select general partnership. But if this was a limited liability partnership, I'll just show you real quick. It's going to show you another option here where you can select whether or not you're working with a full SHIA partnership, which is that all of the partners will be treated as limited partners. You would select this option. That will flow through into the calculations. Or if it's a partial shield, then it will treat your partners as general partners, and again, will flow through into all of the calculations in this particular instance. But just to keep things simple, I'm going to make this a general partnership. There's also the tax shelter partnership types underneath here, if that's applicable. Your language of correspondence, I'm just going to pop English in there. And then if it's a partnership is a member of another partnership, we would select yes here. This isn't applicable, so I don't need to complete it. And then we're going to put in the address. Here. I'm going to assume they are in Quebec because we want to cover the French version as well. And then the same as in any other module in TaxCycle, you can choose a different location of books and records. I'm going to leave it there, and a different mailing address if applicable. If we keep going down this form, then we're going to need to enter the contact and authorized person. propertypartners.com. All right, and we're going to also make Stephanie the contact person for our return. You can also, you have the option to choose the firm, or you can uncheck this and it'll blank out the information here, and you can choose, you can enter somebody else if that is applicable. Further down, we have the residency question. So in my example here, we're going to say we are both in Alberta. Actually, let's make it. We're going to say we're both in Ontario and in Quebec is where we have operations for our partnership. Go a little bit further down, we have the general filing questions. So if this N members will be calculated based on what you put in for partners. So that will automatically get updated. If this is the first year of filing, then we would select yes here as well, if this is the first year the partnership existed. If it's a dissolution, then you can select yes here. This will get read into some of the calculations as we go deeper into the return. So that will help speed up preparation in the event of a dissolution. If you have foreign property, so that's our T1135 question, then we would select yes here. When we do this, it will trigger the option to transmit that return once it's completed. And then these next two questions have to do with immediate expensing. And I'm just going to go ahead and answer yes to both of these. And then along this other side, we've added the new question. So if you have foreign affiliates as part of the partnership, you can now complete the T1134 inside of the T5013 return and electronically transmit that information. I'm not going to cover that because that will take too much time to cover here, but know that that is available, and we do have some help topics on our website to help walk you through how that works. I'm going to go ahead and select always use today's date. And then if we scroll a bit further down, we have some of the TP600 specific questions here. And we have to put in a business. So I'm going to say they're real estate property managers. And for the TP600, we're going to say that they primarily have rental income. And I believe those are all. And then if you're doing anything related to a SIFT, nominees or agents, there's another section down here that you would complete in the event of that particular scenario. The next thing that we would typically do is go to the engagement worksheet. If you have information that you need to track for your office, that would go in this first section. Again, very similar to every other module in TaxCycle. All of our key dates for workflow you can add here. They will show up in track workflow. Those fields for dates are connected between here and workflow. So you can add them here. You can add them directly in the side panel in your workflow as well. It will automatically calculate the legislated filing date for you based on the type of partnership that you have and the year end. And then further down, if you want to track these other various items for authorizations and prior year returns, and then at the very bottom, keep going, we have the section for invoicing. So this will keep track of your prior year invoices, your current year invoice and amounts, and there's a section if after filing your client moves, changes office locations, you can put in the address that's going to apply for next year's return, and it will carry this information forward for you when you do your carry forward. All right, and then just going to check my outline. Oh, I also wanted to mention that in T5013, we also, if you have a partnership that has SR and ED claims to make, we also support all of those forms for partnerships now in our module as well. And then that information gets electronically transmitted with the T5013 partnership return when that is sent in. All right. So once we have our info sheet set up and our engagement worksheet is all ready to go, we would next want to import our partners and set them all up in here for allocating income from the partnership. So we'll open up the partners tab on the side here. We're going to go to the partners information worksheet. And you can either just start manually entering in here. So if I have a partner that is Jones, and then I would just go across and fill out all of the forms. But just to speed things up here, I am going to go to my data tab, and I've got an import template that I've created to import all my partners. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And there we go. Now I have all of my partners. I've created an extra row I'm going to get rid of Okay. So I have 5 partners. They're all individual partners, individual type partners. They're all general partners. And I can see here that I have a warning that I'm missing a postal code. So if I go ahead and look them up, let's say they are just one. My keyboard's being goofy. Okay, we're going to fix them in here. Oh, I have to do, because it's a US and we're masked for Canadian postal codes, I just have to hit this mask override and then I can put in there. That is what I was missing. Okay, so now I have my US partners set up as well. So now I have all of my partners are in. I'm happy with that. The next thing I need to do is go to my allocation worksheet. And this is where I'm going to set up how I'm going to allocate the partnership income to the individual partners that are members of the partnership. The options I have is to allocate based on the units at the end of the fiscal year. You can allocate using the accounting income allocated. So that would be this column here. You can manually allocate percentage directly here in this column, or you can manually allocate everything using option 4. And if I select option 4, it gives me the additional option if I'm preparing an TP600 and RL15s, then I can also elect to transfer all of those amounts directly over to the related Quebec forms as well. Or I can leave it like this when I would need to manually enter all of my information for both parts. For simplicity, I'm going to leave this as partnership units, and I'm going to give everybody the same number of partnership units. So everyone gets an equal percentage. Okay, so next we'll want to get all of our financial information into our partnership return so that we have the income here to begin doing our allocations. So we can just go into this next section, which is our GIFI. I'm going to close partners. And I like to do it from the T125. You can also do it from the S100 if you prefer. And so if I click on this and then go up to the data tab again into import GIFI, and I'm going to select to import. I'm going to go to my folder where I've stored that T5013 GIFI, and I'm going to select it. And now you can see if I scroll down that I've imported all of the data for this particular partnership. You also have the option to go ahead and put in here manually, or you can start typing. It'll pop up a short list of applicable GIFI codes that you can select, and you can add revenue manually this way. If I realize I've made a mistake, you can hit the undo button or just import again, and it will overwrite what you imported previously and give you the new financial information, new updated financial information. We also have a prior year, our prior fiscal period column here. So if we're carrying forward, prior year's information will show here. You have a nice quick comparative if you scroll down to see what the differences were from prior year. And we have the same sort of functionality here on the balance sheet as well. Now, if I go to my financial notes, I've got a blocker here, so I need to fill this out. And I'm going to say that, yes, I can identify who that person was. They have a designation. They are not connected to the partnership. And we're going to assume we're doing a compilation. And no reservation. And just to make this easy, I'm just going to make these no's. You will select whatever is appropriate. And we're just going to go down and say no to all of these. And then we're going to say we prepared the financial information and the return. So now our GIFI section is completed. There's no more review messages to worry about there. You'll notice that I have the little starburst here next to these two, which indicates that I've imported from another source, that these weren't manually entered. So a nice little visual cue so you know where that data came from. The next thing I'm going to want to do is hop on down to my federal jacket, and I'm going to go to my S1. So now I have all of my income. I'm going to come to my S1 next, and I'm going to make all of the relevant adjustments between the accounting records to get to a taxable income amount. And just to keep this simple, I'm just going to put in an amount here for salaries and wages paid for partners. And then that will adjust my taxable income. I'm happy I've captured all of my information appropriately here on the S1. Next, I'm going to go to my S1 worksheet, S1WS, that's what that stands for. And this is where I'm going to allocate that partnership income to the relevant types of income that are going to flow through the partnership directly to the partners of the partnership. At the top of this worksheet, I have a couple of options where I can hide sections that might not be relevant to me, which will just make it a lot easier to scroll down this form. So in this case, I'm not going to use generic box sections, so I can just hide those. And I'm going to leave notes on for now. This next question is, in the automatic calculation, sometimes there's a rounding difference depending on the amounts and the percentages of the partners. And by default, we have this set to just allocate that minor variance to the last partner entered in the tax return. You can also use this box to pick a specific partner you want the rounding variances to go to. And if you don't, then again, by default, we'll just go to that last partner. This next section here is our income reconciliation option. You'll note that these are all green. You cannot change the amounts here. These amounts are pulled up from information further down in this worksheet and just show you a snapshot of the key information that you need to reconcile your amounts entered to the taxable income that you're reporting in the 5013 return. Underneath this, we have an option to auto allocate to a particular line. So if I pull down here, I can select business income or any one of these other lines to automatically allocate to. And so if I choose business income, you'll notice I get this adjusted amount. We'll want to clear out any amount that might have been entered here in line 116. We're going to default to this adjusted amount that's calculated, and it's going to automatically allocate any amounts I haven't allocated on another line on the worksheet here. So it'll just make entry a little bit easier if you want to use that option. You don't have to use it, but it is available there if you find that useful. So if we go a little bit further down, I'm going to go ahead and put in amounts for our gross business income. And I'm going to put in some, I'm going to ignore rental for now. I am going to add rental income, but we're going to do that on the rental sheet. So I'm going to skip past that, and I'm going to put in some amount of dividends and some amount of carrying charges related to those dividends. And then if I scroll back up, you'll see that those amounts are now getting pulled into my reconciliation. But what I am missing now is rental income. So I'm going to go to my rental worksheet along the side, or you can use your, if I'm on the home here, you can fast find or F4 and search for this rental worksheet. And this is not the final year. We're going to say that our rental properties in Quebec. And we're going to put in some sort of a description here so that we know which rental property it is in case we have multiple rental properties. You'll note that when I entered information here, it's created another rental worksheet for me. You can add as many as you need as are relevant. And in this case, I am going to say that this is just, we'll just put something in here so we can identify it. And then our rental amounts, I'm just going to quickly punch in here. Some amount for property taxes, some amount for utilities. And then we have our total expenses and net rental income. That's going to populate down into our amounts that will flow to the T5013 and the TP600 and RL15. If you have limited partners, this line here, 107, is where you will put in the amounts that are going to be allocated to your limited partners, and it will automatically adjust line 110 for your general partners. And similarly, we're going to do the same thing down here. If you have limited partners for your RL15 allocations, you'll put the amount down here. But because we're doing general, we're going to leave this as is. But I'm going to assume that of the carrying charges that I've entered above, that 2,500 of those, interest and carrying charges that are entered above, 2,500 will be related to carrying charges, and that will flow through to our S1WS as well. Okay, so now we've accounted for our rental income. We haven't set up any assets yet, so now I'm going to go to my asset worksheet. And this is where I'm going to enter the building that we're using for rental. If this is a brand new building we just bought in the year, you're going to go down to the bottom here, and you'll add it as a new addition in the year and complete this section. I'm going to assume that we're just picking up this partnership that they've already filed a prior year. So instead, I'm going to enter their beginning cost here for the building. And I'm going to enter their opening UCC balances. And then we need to also select the rental property and income that this applies to. As you know, CCA is limited to the amount, in a lot of cases, is limited to the amount of income from the property. So now we've set up our building. If we have other assets, you'll go ahead and add new assets and enter all of the pieces that are relevant here. Then we'll want to check out our S8 claim. And over here, we will determine how we want to claim our CCA on non-rental assets and how we want to claim our CCA on rental-related assets, and whether or not it's limited for buildings for CCA purposes as well. So I'm just going to leave these as the default. And then also, sorry, this is our limitation for regulation for rental statements, so I'm going to leave that as yes as well. Or you can uncheck this and not claim any CCA on buildings, which in many cases makes sense to do for buildings in particular. And then further down, we have our immediate expensing settings as well. These work exactly the same as in the other modules in TaxCycle. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. And I believe we might still have the immediate expensing webinar available somewhere. Okay, so now there is also our reconciliation for the fixed assets. So you're going to need to open or add your opening net book value here so that we don't have a variance at the bottom. So this will be negative, I believe. And now we are reconciled here. So we've done S1. So we go through a similar process for our Quebec return. So if I open Quebec along the side and I go to TPF, which is the equivalent of our S1 federally, all of the information is already calculating here from the S1. I'm not going to make any other adjustments here, but the field that we're going to care about is at the bottom, which is the amount that we're going to attribute to our general partners. And I'm just going to say, because it is a general partnership, that all of those amounts are attributable, and then we've taken care of that review message. All right, so I'm just going to pop back into our S1WS, and you'll see now that we have our rental income, which we brought in from our rental worksheet that we finished entering. And if we scroll down, you'll see that our business income amount has been adjusted. And further down, we will have the amount of CCA will automatically get calculated in here based on the settings that we've selected. And further down near the bottom, there are a couple of, I'm thinking of the 5013 partner, which we will look at next. But these are the amounts for all partners. This is what's going to get allocated to the individual partners. And if we come back up to the top, we have our review message that's saying now, update the S1. There's a box there that says how much are you allocating to general partners. We have an audit message with a quick fix here, so I'm just going to select that. So it's going to enter that amount and reconcile it with my S1. Similar allocation happens here on the TPF worksheet. So that's our French equivalent, and it's going to pick up my preferences that I've selected for T5013 and the calculation options that I've selected, and it's automatically allocated everything I need here already, so I don't need to make any adjustments here, but it's a good idea to review it just in case. So now I'm happy. I've got my partnership information is recorded, and it's now split up to the appropriate lines that it needs to get reported on. I'm going to go ahead and close worksheets, and then we're going to go down here to our slips, and we'll go to our first partner. And so this information got dropped in from the partner worksheet that we imported. Under filing information, you have type of slip. So if we're coming back in here and we need to amend or cancel a slip, this is where you're going to select that option. If for some reason we have a partner that we just want to carry forward for tracking purposes, but we're not allocating any income to them in the current period, you can exclude this particular slip from filing. Or maybe a new partner is coming on board next year, but this year they don't have an allocation. You can enter that and, again, exclude them from filing and select whether or not you want to carry this slip forward when you do your next year carry forward. Our allocation method is duplicated here. If you change it here, it changes for the entire file. It's linked to the same boxes that we were looking at on the allocation worksheet. And it's dropped in our number of units from that and our allocation to the partner as well. Underneath here is if, for some reason, the way that we're calculating all of the income splits from line 107 amount is different than what you need to report on the actual slip. You can put the reporting split percentage here. It won't affect calculations. We're calculating off of this box 107, but if you need to, for whatever reason, report something slightly different on the slip, you would enter that in this box, and that is what will flow down to the slip that you issue and send to your partners. In the capital account section, this is where you'll put in all of the relevant information. We had a partner that had some salary draws, so I'm going to just assume it was this partner just to clear our audit message there. And so again, all of your relevant capital account items will go in here. Amounts that we can pull down into other calculations where they're relevant will drop down into the information further down below. The next section is our partner's ACB. So that's our cost basis that our adjusted cost base that we're going to keep track of for our partners. In this case, I'm assuming that they had a prior year. So I'm going to give everyone some nominal amount of ACB. And then any adjustments that happen from the previous fiscal year will automatically get calculated in here. When we roll it forward, you can make any adjustments that are relevant, and we end up with our ACB ending. The next section is withdrawal of a partner. So you'll recall at the beginning of the webinar, I mentioned that on the info page, if you select that the partnership is being dissolved in the year, then that will flow through into this section and will trigger some additional calculations here that are related to dissolution of a partnership. If you have a limited partnership and where at-risk amounts will apply, if your partner is a limited partner, this section will automatically get turned on for the calculations. But we also offer here an override because there are some situations where you might have a deemed limited partner, but their actual partnership type might be something else. So if you still need to trigger the at-risk amount calculation for that partner, and they're not officially a limited partner, they're a deemed limited partner, you can select yes here, and it will enable all of the same calculations that you would expect to see for a limited partner. And then if we scroll down, you'll see that all of my amounts have been automatically allocated based on the allocation that I have selected. And if I go right down to the bottom, or near the bottom, I also have the option to add some slip notes. So this first box is calculated slip notes that we've embedded in the software, and they're triggered with certain activities related to maybe a deemed a deemed a deemed capital gain. Get my brain working again. Then it'll trigger the appropriate footnote to land here. If you have some other footnote that you want to add for your partners, you can just manually type it in this second box. That will flow down and actually print on the individual slip for this partner. And then at the very bottom, we show you a snapshot of what the printed slip will look like. You can use this as a way to verify that the information is being reported to your partner the way that you expect and in the right boxes. Similarly, on the RL15 partner, this works exactly the same way. And again, we offer the same footnote boxes down at the bottom. So they will also show And I'm going to just put that one in. We said the same slip footnotes will show here. So the calculated ones, the manual one that you can add, and then a snapshot of that RL15 and what it'll look like when it is printed. So this one box is not part of our calculations because we can't tell from the CCA where that belongs. So I'm just going to go ahead and enter these in here to clear that message. All right, so now our variance message has gone away. This column will keep track of any amounts that are recorded for the partnership that have not been allocated to a partner. So it's a nice quick check to see if there's any amounts there that you still have to allocate out. So those are our individual slips and for the partners. I also will show you the summaries that we have. So we have an S1 5-year comparative in here. So we can, we have the information from the current year. If you were rolling this forward, this would move to the second year and would continue to complete till you have 5 years worth of data here. Or you can manually add prior years if you want, and then those will continue to roll forward as well. Similarly, we have one for the French schedule as well, the 5-year comparative. And then we also have a few dynamic summaries, which you might be familiar with from other modules. This will, any changes here will update the T5013 and the RL15 partners where it's relevant. So in this case, if I wanted to go ahead and start entering a cost base for everyone, I could do that here. If I go to the top and I right click, I can manage the columns that I see here. And maybe I want to add my ACB beginning just for quick input. I can do that here. And you'll see it's dropped that in now. So I can quickly go in and update my ACB beginning for everybody. And these amounts with the numbers will report on Schedule 50 for you. Similarly, we have a slips summary. And this works in a similar way for quick data input. So if I right click on here and go to manage columns, you'll see all of the available boxes from the T5013. I can add the ones that I want to my selected columns on this side, click OK, and then I have this as a quick overview or a way to input data if I want to use it that way as well for individual partners. In particular, if I'm using a manual entry method. And then I also am showing the type of slip and whether or not they're excluded from filing here. So it's a nice summary of all of your partners and their allocations. It's printable, it's customizable, it's very handy and useful. We have a similar one for RL15s that works exactly the same way as what I just showed you there. All right, so now I have all of my data in. I have everything allocated out to my partners. Next thing I want to do is go to my review tab and just see if I have any outstanding reviews. And I do have, so I'm going to go to my fin. So that my T5013 fin, and I'm just going to go through, these are where a lot of these audit messages are getting generated from. And so I've forgotten to answer these questions on my jacket. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And I did say that I'm going to do a T5013, so or T1135, sorry, I'm going to leave that there. And those are all completed. And then this is giving me a reminder that penalties apply if I said yes, and I didn't actually file that form. I'm just going to sign that one off. I have a reminder here that I have property, so maybe my UHT might apply, might have to file an underused housing tax. And I'm going to say, no, I don't. It's not applicable in this case, so I'm just going to sign that off. If I said yes, this will trigger a paragraph in the client letter, and it will also be searchable in Client Manager as well. So you can find those partnerships real quick where a UHT might apply. And I didn't allocate salaries and wages, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to say I have most of my salaries that I pay are in Quebec, but I have one employee, let's say, in Ontario. So I'm going to set up that allocation. And that's my S5. It will flow to the related form for Quebec. I have a format override, and I know that's correct. So that's fine. And that is also correct. All right, so now we're just down to our 1135. And I didn't complete that, so let's go to our 1135 form. It's already dropped in my partnership information from info. Just for simplicity, I'm going to go ahead and just use the simplified format. And I'm just going to put in one country and some amount here. So now my T1135 is completed. And another reminder. And now I've cleared all of my review messages. So if I go to my transmit pane, it should show me everything ready to transmit. MR69 is not, and I'm not going to file that, so I'm just going to leave that. But if it is applicable, or if you need to do an author up biz, you can do that directly from T5013 as well. So if a TP600 applies, you will have to print it out on paper and submit it to Revenue Quebec in that format. Okay, so 1135, if I hit ready to transmit, agree to all the conditions, and then if I hit transmit now, we'll directly submit the form using your e-file credentials. For RL15, same thing. T5013 and the summary and slips will go through their web browser, their net file transmission. So if I hit transmit now, it will open up a browser, which is off my screen. Where are you? There we go. We'll open up a browser, we'll generate a file, and this is not populating because I'm in the wrong mode to show it, but you would see the CRA transmit information here. You would go ahead and click OK, record the submission, and oh, there it is, it's just slow. So then you can go ahead once you've transmitted to record the submission and close this window. I cannot use this because it would go to their live site, so I'm just going to cancel out of this. And I'm just going to close that. But a similar thing would happen with the 5013 fin as well. So then once we've transmitted, the next thing we probably want to do is print, but I'm going to go to track first, which is the workflow. And I'm going to say that we already did all of this stuff ahead of time, which should complete this section. I'm just going to go down. Say data entry is complete. We have reviewed it. Clients approved it. we'll say we did print it and it's signed and filed. And then this is where I'm just going to put in some transmission number just so it will show as transmitted in my side panel. And there's our TP600 paper filed and our RL15 transmitted. Right, so if I go back to my transmit panel, now you'll see that, well, I did this in the wrong order, but this is showing that these are transmitted now. We got the little happy faces, which we like to see, means it's successfully gone through. And then if we want to print, we go to our print dialog, our print option along the side here. In 5013, we have a pull-down menu at the top here. So if you're printing the return, you can leave it on the return to print your copies there. If you're printing slips, you would just select whether you're printing original, amended, or canceled slips here. So if I select slips, then I get a different set of print options. And there's all the slips that I can print for the partner and the issuer, and also my options for TP600 and RL15. The 1135 and the 1134 also have electronic transmission for any documents that you need to send to support your filings, and those work in the same way that you would be used to seeing them working in a T2 return in TaxCycle. You would go to the internet worksheet. I believe that's in here, the results worksheet. And if you want to transmit documents electronically, you would select here. You would put in the confirmation number from the filing of your form, and then you would come down here and add the documents that you need to submit to support that filing. So now I finished filing. I'm happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and save my file. It's going to ask me where I want to put it. I'll just put it in this folder. And I can go ahead in it's in the client menu. Where are we? Security, sorry. In the security menu, I have the option to lock this file. So no more changes can be made to it unless I go back in and unlock it. You can also add a password here if you want for additional security on the file. So then the other thing I wanted to cover with everybody, and the last thing that we're going to go over, is adjusting a return. So if now the partnership has come back to me and they said they've made an error in their records and they missed some income, which we need to adjust for all of our partners, then we would come back here, and I would recommend, just for additional safety, to go into the Tools menu and take a snapshot of your file before you start making any changes. I would use this 5013 as filed and just put a as filed and maybe the date if you want it here, whatever reference makes sense for you. And just create a snapshot, because then you'll have that where you can use to show any variances and just compare your changes to what your filed information was in the file. And then to amend your return, you would come back down here into your info worksheet. And at the top of the general filing section, are they filing an amended return? You're going to say yes. return is amended. You'll get the little suggestion at the top, the banner at the top that says, do you want to rename this as adjusted? If you want to keep your adjusted file separate from your original file, and I personally like to do this, so then you can say, yeah, I want to rename this now to this. So I'm going to click yes. So I'll have my original file, and now I'm going to have an adjusted file. So I've gone ahead and done that. And then I'm also going to say, yeah, I'm amending the related TB600. And you're going to have to put in a reason for the amendment here. And then you can go ahead and start making your changes. And remember I showed you that on your slips. So if we go to our partner, and we go to the top of our form here, and we're going to have to change. If we're only amending one slip, I only need to change the one slip here. I'll make my financial changes that are relevant in the detail below. And then I can go back to my transmit pane, and it will now show if it was previously transmitted, you'll need to dismiss the prior transmission. And now you can see that it's also ready to submit amended returns. You can't do this without first sending your original returns, but because I can't live transmit here, this wouldn't normally show this way. It'd be 0 ideally, and we'd just be transmitting this one amended return. So we would hit transmit now. If I was canceling that slip, I would see that option to transmit now under the canceled slip. So simple as that. That is how you amend a return. I would also need to send a revised T5013 FIN potentially. So you just dismiss there and also refile, as well as your related RL15 and TB600. And that is everything that I wanted to cover with you all here today. So thank you very much for sitting in with me and walking through how to complete a T5013 return. I hope you have learned something here today, and hopefully we'll see you again at another webinar. Take care.